So they say there's really kind of two types of people, rule breakers and rule followers. And my wife this morning, Megan, she said how she isn't perfect, but growing up, she was pretty close to it. She never got in trouble growing up. Me, on the other hand, I am a rule breaker, and I was in trouble all the time. And in fact, I like to joke, but it's probably closer to the truth. I was grounded more than I wasn't growing up, and so we lived a very different lives growing up. I became very intimately familiar with the inside of my house because I was grounded so often. And Megan, she never got in trouble growing up. Actually, that's not true. There is one time that she did get in trouble. She got in trouble for going to her friend's house when she wasn't supposed to, and her dad got mad at her and yelled at her and got her in trouble. But then later found out that he was mistaken. She was supposed to be there, and actually had to come back later and apologize to her. And so yeah, there's really these kind of two different types of people, rule breakers and rule followers. And chances are you kind of know which one you are. You know if you lean more towards following all the rules or breaking them. And this morning, the parable that we're talking about is the parable of the prodigal son. And it's the parable of the prodigal son, and and that's a good name for it, but really I think a better name for it could be the parable of the two sons, because it's a story about two sons. There's the younger son who is a rule breaker, and then an older son who is a rule follower. And while a lot of emphasis is given on the prodigal son, the younger son, this story is really about both sons. And so we're going to be looking at that this morning. If you have your Bibles, open up to Luke 15, starting in verse 11. It says, "And he said, there was a man who had two sons. And the younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me.' And he divided his property between them." This was extremely disrespectful of the younger son. The younger son is essentially going to his father and saying, "You are worth more to me dead than you are alive. Like I would rather have your money and your possessions than you." It would be equivalent to learning that you have been placed as the benefactor for someone's life insurance. And the week after you learn that, going up to them and being like, "You know how I'm getting all that money when you die? Can you just go ahead and hurry that up?" Like, this is what the younger son is essentially saying. He's saying, you are worth more to me dead than alive. I'd rather have your money than you around. This was extremely disrespectful, extremely hurtful to the father. Continuing on in verse 13, it says, "Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country. And there he squandered his property in reckless living." One of my favorite TV shows is a show called Parks and Rec. Anyone like that show? It's pretty funny. I love that show. And in that show, there's these two characters in the show, Donna and Tom. And they once a year they have a treat yourself day. In the show they call it treat yourself, so treat yourself. But it's a day where they just go and they get whatever they want. If they want a massage, they go and get a massage. If they want new clothes, they go and get new clothes. If they want to eat a fancy meal, they go and eat this fancy meal. They do whatever they want on Treat Yourself Day, and they live recklessly, and they just have this day where they go and have a ton of fun and do whatever it is they want. And I think as Christians, sometimes we think that non-Christians are kind of living this horrible life and they're just miserable all the time. But the reality is, if your non-Christian friends and family members and coworkers, like they've slow rolled it this morning. They probably slept in until 10. And right now they're out probably getting ready to go to brunch, as my wife said, enjoying nice waffle, maybe a mimosa or whatever. Like honestly, I would rather be there than listening to myself speak. And so, they're having fun, and like being reckless, and it can be fun. It can you can treat yourself and have a great time. But here's the thing about reckless living: is while recklessness can buy you some fun, it can't buy you meaning and purpose. And so, recklessness without God often ends up in consequences and loneliness and lack of meaning and purpose. And I'm not saying that as Christians we can't have fun. We should have fun as Christians. We should be reckless every now and so often, but reckless with God, knowing that God is always going to bring us back to meaning and purpose. And because without it, like I said, we get lost and we don't have that meaning and purpose. And there's often consequences that come with consistent reckless living. And we see that in this parable. In verse 14, it says, "And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of the country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants.'" The younger son, he had to get to a point where he was humiliated and humbled in order to come back to the Father. And then this isn't just true for the younger son. This is true for all of us. We all have to get to the point where we are humbled enough to be able to come to the Father. And this is hard to do because being humiliated, being humbled is admitting that your way, the way you go about living your life, is not always the best way. Maybe you have been wrong about some of the things in your life. Maybe the way you've gone about living your life or spending the money or however it is, the decisions you have made, maybe some of them have been wrong. And getting to the point where you are humbled enough to come to the Father and say, I was wrong. Your ways are better. Living under your guidance and your wisdom and your love is better than doing it my own way. And that's hard to do. But just like the younger son, we all have to get to the point where we are humbled enough to be able to come to the Father. And when we get to that point, I love the Father's reaction. And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. And bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. In those moments when we have been humbled and humiliated, and we come before God thinking that we aren't worth a thing, the Father is there to lift us up and tell us that we are worth everything. He gives us the best robe. He gives us a ring to put on our fingers. He gives us the shoes. And he goes and he kills the fattened calf. The fattened calf would have been the most prized possession that the family had. The most prized and valuable possession that the family had. And he goes and he kills it to show his love for this undeserving, disrespectful, foolish son of his. And this is what God does for you and me as well. God, he takes his most prized possession, his son, and leads him to slaughter on the cross so that we can be reconciled with him and so that he can shower us with many blessings and show us his deep love that he has for us. We're going to be moving into this time of communion. And as we move into this time of communion, I think that this image of Jesus being led to the slaughter on the cross as a symbol of God's love for us is a great reminder this morning. Like, this is what God does. He takes his most valuable, prized possession and leads it to slaughter so that we may see and feel his blessings and his love.